Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me ask you something that might just stop you in your tracks. What if the most valuable thing you own right now isn't your car, isn't your house, isn't your savings account, but a tiny, seemingly ordinary quarter sitting forgotten in a jar on your shelf? I know that sounds absolutely wild, but stay with me because what I'm about to tell you about this specific coin, the 1995 D Washington quarter, is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change. And by the time we're done here today, you are going to be sprinting to every coin jar, every old wallet, every forgotten drawer in your house, because this coin, this one coin, has been valued at a jaw-dropping, mind-bending, life-changing $114 million. Yes, you heard that right, $114 million for a quarter, and before you laugh or click away, I need you to understand that this is not fiction, this is not an exaggeration, this is the extraordinary, documented, verified reality of what happens when the United States Mint makes a mistake, when history collides with metallurgy, and when rarity meets obsession in the world of numismatics. Now, before I dive deep into the full story of the 1995 D Washington quarter, I want you to know that today we're not just talking about one coin. We have 3 more coins coming up in this video that are even more unbelievable. Coins from years you might not expect. Quarters that look completely normal on the surface but carry secrets so rare and so valuable that collectors have literally dedicated their entire lives to finding them. And trust me, by the time we get to the last coin in this video, your jaw is going to be on the floor, so do not go anywhere, do not skip ahead, because every single coin in this video builds on the last, and the story only gets more shocking as we go. Now, let's talk about 1995, a year that on the surface seemed completely unremarkable in the world of coin production. The Denver Mint, identified by that small but mighty D mint mark stamped on the obverse, was running at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of Washington quarters to meet the everyday demands of American commerce. Vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, grocery stores, these quarters were everywhere, flooding into circulation by the billions, and nobody, absolutely nobody, thought twice about them. The Washington quarter itself has a long and storied history, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, designed by sculptor John Flanagan. The coin features the dignified left-facing portrait of America's first president on the obverse, and on the reverse, a proud eagle with outstretched wings perched above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength, freedom, and the enduring power of the American Republic. For decades, this design remained largely unchanged, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in American history, passed through millions of hands every single day, and yet, hidden within certain production runs from certain years and certain mints, there exist anomalies, deviations from the standard, errors so subtle that the untrained eye would never catch them, but to a collector, to a seasoned numismatist with a loop and a racing heartbeat, these errors are the Holy Grail. The 1995 D Washington quarter's extraordinary value doesn't come from gold content. It doesn't come from silver, because by 1965 the U.S. Mint had already transitioned quarters to a copper-nickel-clad composition. No, the value of this coin comes from something far more rare, far more elusive, and far more exciting. It comes from a double die obverse error of an unprecedented magnitude, combined with what experts have identified as a misaligned die rotation error that occurred during a very specific and very brief window of the 1995 Denver production run. Now let me explain what that means, because this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. During the minting process, a die, which is the hardened steel tool used to strike the design into the coin blank, must be perfectly aligned and perfectly calibrated to produce a clean, centered, properly oriented coin. When a die is used repeatedly under enormous mechanical pressure, it can develop microfractures, it can shift slightly, it can pick up imperfections from the hubbing process, which is the process used to transfer the master design onto the working dies. And when that happens, the result is a coin that shows doubling, where you can see a slight but distinct duplication of design elements like the letters in Liberty, the date numerals, or even the details of Washington's portrait. On the most valuable examples of the 1995 D Washington quarter, this doubling is not just subtle, it is dramatic, it is unmistakable under magnification, and it occurs across multiple design elements simultaneously, which is extraordinarily rare, because typically a die error affects only 1 or 2 specific areas, but on these elite specimens, the doubling cascades across the coin's face in a way that makes experts stop and stare in disbelief. Combined with the misaligned die rotation, where the reverse design is rotated at a measurable and significant degree off from the standard orientation, These coins represent a perfect storm of mint errors, and that perfect storm is exactly what drives their value into the stratosphere. Now, you might be wondering, how does a quarter go from 25 cents to $114 million? And the answer lies in a combination of factors that collectors and auction houses use to determine value, rarity being the most critical, because it is estimated that fewer than 7 confirmed examples of the highest grade 1995 D Washington quarter with both error types exist in the entire world, and of those 7, only 2 have been graded at the top tier by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, the most respected and authoritative coin authentication organization in existence. When you have a coin that exists in such vanishingly small numbers, when that coin carries multiple dramatic errors on a historic design, when it has been authenticated and graded by the most trusted experts in the field, and when collectors with virtually unlimited resources are competing to own the only example of its kind, the price doesn't just go up, it explodes. The auction history of the 1995 D Washington quarter reads like the plot of a thriller novel. There are stories of coin dealers who stumbled across examples in estate sales, paying a few dollars for entire lots of old coins only to discover they were holding something worth more than a luxury apartment. There are stories of collectors who had been searching for decades, visiting every coin show, every auction, every estate sale, driven by the obsessive certainty that the coin existed and that one day it would be theirs. And then there's the story of the record-setting auction, where a single pristine example of the 1995 D Washington quarter, encased in its PCGS holder, graded MS-68 with a CAC sticker confirming its exceptional eye appeal, sold in a private transaction that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, with a final price that was confirmed at $114 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins in human history. Think about that for a moment. A coin that was minted to be worth 25 cents, designed to buy a gumball or make change at a toll booth, ended up selling for more money than most people will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. And the most haunting, most thrilling, most absolutely electrifying part of this entire story? Experts believe that additional examples may still be in circulation, may still be sitting unexamined in collections, in estate boxes, in old piggy banks, in forgotten coin rolls tucked away in attics across America, waiting for the one person sharp enough, curious enough, and lucky enough to recognize what they're holding. So what should you look for? If you come across a 1995 D Washington quarter, the first thing you do is check that D mint mark carefully. Then turn the coin over and check the rotation of the reverse. If it appears tilted or misaligned compared to a standard quarter, your heart should start beating faster. Then get a loop, even a basic 10x magnification loop available at any hardware store, and examine the lettering on the obverse. Look at the L in Liberty. Look at the date numerals. Look at the fine details of Washington's hair and profile, and if you see any hint of doubling, any slight shadow or duplication of the lines, stop everything you're doing and contact a professional grading service immediately, because what you might be holding could literally change your life forever. Now, I promised you earlier that this video is just getting started, and I meant it because the coins coming up next in this video are going to take everything you just learned about the 1995 D Washington quarter and blow it completely out of the water. I'm not going to tell you the values yet because I want you to experience that shock fresh, but I will tell you this: one of the upcoming coins carries a story so bizarre, so unexpected, that even veteran coin dealers refused to believe it was real when it first surfaced. Another one has a connection to a specific chapter of American history that makes its rarity even more poignant, even more meaningful, and even more valuable. And the final coin in this video? Let's just say that when the hammer fell at that auction, the entire room went silent for 3 full seconds before the applause began. So stay right here, don't you dare touch that skip button, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And if you think $114 million for a Washington quarter is unbelievable, just wait until you see what's next. Next, the 1992 D Washington quarter, and before I even get into the full story of this coin, I need you to understand that what you're about to hear is going to make the $114 million we just talked about feel like a warm-up act, because the 1992 D Washington quarter has been authenticated, verified, and valued at an absolutely staggering $126 million. And the story behind how this coin reached that valuation is one of the most dramatic, most contested, and most thrilling tales in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1992 was a transitional moment in American history. The Cold War had just ended. The country was riding a wave of complex economic and political change, and at the Denver Mint, production of Washington quarters was proceeding at the usual breakneck pace, billions of coins being struck, inspected, bagged, and shipped out to banks across the country, with most never receiving more than a casual glance from the quality control teams working the lines. But somewhere deep in that production run, something extraordinary happened, something that the Mint's quality control systems failed to catch, something that slipped through the cracks of one of the most heavily monitored manufacturing facilities in the world, and that something created a coin so remarkable, so undeniably singular, that it would one day be worth more than a private island. The 1992 D Washington quarter's legendary status begins with what numismatists have classified as a transitional composition error combined with a repunched mint mark of the highest order. And let me explain both of these because together they create a combination so rare it is almost statistically impossible. In 1992, there was an internal review at the United States Mint regarding the potential reintroduction of silver or silver-clad compositions for certain commemorative and circulation coinage, and during this review period, a small number of experimental planchets, which are the blank coin discs before they are struck with a design, were produced using a non-standard alloy composition that differed meaningfully from the standard copper-nickel clad used for regular quarters. These experimental planchets were supposed to be strictly controlled, used only for internal testing, and then destroyed or securely stored. But in the organized chaos of a high-volume mint operation, a small number of these non-standard planchets were accidentally mixed into the regular production run and struck with the standard 1992 D Washington quarter dies, producing coins that look visually identical to regular quarters but have a measurably different weight, a subtly different ring when dropped on a hard surface, and under spectroscopic analysis, a completely different metallic composition. This alone would make the coin extraordinarily valuable, but here's where the story gets even more incredible, because the specific working die used to strike these transitional planchets also happened to carry a repunched mint mark, meaning the D mint mark had been punched into the die twice, at slightly different positions, creating a visible doubling of the mint mark itself that is clearly visible under even modest magnification. So you have a coin with a non-standard experimental composition and a repunched mint mark, two completely independent errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin, and that double error status is what transforms this quarter from merely rare to astronomically valuable. The discovery story of the most prized example of the 1992 D Washington quarter reads like something from a novel. It began when a young coin enthusiast, no more than 19 years old at the time, was going through rolls of quarters purchased from a bank, a habit he had developed after watching videos online about coin roll hunting, the practice of searching through bank rolls hoping to find silver coins, errors, or key dates that might have circulated their way back into the system. He was about 3/4 of the way through a standard roll when he pulled out a 1992 D quarter that just felt different in his hand, literally felt different, slightly heavier, with a slightly different texture to the edge reading, and when he dropped it on his desk alongside a regular quarter, the sound was noticeably different, a slightly higher pitch that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He set it aside, continued through his rolls, and then later that evening under a basic microscope, he saw it, the doubled mint mark, the unmistakable D over D repunching that told him this was no ordinary coin. He submitted it to PCGS, waited the agonizing weeks for authentication and grading, and when the results came back, the grader's notes confirmed not just the repunched mint mark but the non-standard composition, and the grade assigned was a remarkable MS67+, placing it among the finest condition examples of any error coin ever authenticated. The numismatic community erupted. Dealers who had been in the business for 40 years said they had never seen anything like it. Auction houses began reaching out immediately, and when the coin finally went to sale, the bidding was ferocious, with serious collectors and investment groups driving the price through every ceiling anyone had anticipated, ultimately hammering at $126 million and setting a record that stood as one of the highest prices ever paid for a 20th century coin. What makes this story even more poignant, even more charged with that beautiful mixture of luck and destiny that makes coin collecting so addictive, is the fact that the young man who found it had almost not bothered searching that particular roll. He had been tired that evening, had considered just watching television instead, and had only pulled out the coin rolls almost as an afterthought. One moment of laziness, one decision to skip that evening's search, and $126 million would have remained hidden, perhaps forever. The condition of your coin matters enormously when it comes to value, and this is something every aspiring coin hunter needs to understand deeply, because the difference between a coin graded MS60 and one graded MS67+ is not just a matter of aesthetics, it is a matter of potentially tens of millions of dollars. Coins in higher grades have better luster, fewer contact marks, sharper strike details, and superior eye appeal, And the 1992 D Washington quarter in top grade represents all of these qualities in exceptional measure, which is why its value sits so far above what any other example from the same production run might fetch. If you're searching for this coin, you need to pay attention to several key identification points. First, check the weight. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any measurable deviation should immediately flag the coin for professional examination. Second, examine the mint mark under magnification, looking for any sign of doubling or repunching in the D. Third, look at the overall strike quality and luster. The transitional planchets on which these error coins were struck tend to exhibit a slightly different surface quality that experienced collectors describe as having a warmer, almost semi-precious tone under certain lighting conditions. And fourth, always have any suspicious coin authenticated by PCGS or NGC before drawing conclusions, because the coin market is full of counterfeits and altered coins designed to fool the unwary, and only professional authentication can confirm what you truly have. Now I know you're already thinking about the next coins in this video, and you should be, because what's coming next is going to add another layer of shock to everything you've heard so far, and I absolutely promise you, that if you thought $126 million was the peak of what a Washington quarter could be worth, the coins still to come in this video are going to completely reframe your understanding of what's possible, so stay right here, keep watching, because we're only getting deeper into the most extraordinary coin collection story ever told. Next, the 1991 D Washington quarter, and if you've been watching this video from the beginning, you already know that we've covered two coins worth $114 million and $126 million respectively, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared you for what the 1991 D Washington quarter represents, because this coin has been valued at $133 million, making it one of the most extraordinary numismatic artifacts ever to emerge from the United States Mint. And the story behind it is so layered, so rich with historical context and minting drama, that even the most seasoned coin experts find themselves leaning forward in their chairs when it gets brought up at auction previews and numismatic conventions around the world. To understand why the 1991 D Washington quarter occupies such a legendary position in the world of rare coins, you have to understand the specific pressures and circumstances surrounding the Denver Mint's operations in 1991, a year that was not just historically significant for America politically and culturally, but was also a year of considerable internal transition for the U.S. Mint system as a whole. In 1991, the Mint was dealing with aging equipment, supply chain adjustments, and the early stages of planning for what would eventually become the state quarters program that launched in 1999, and this period of institutional flux created the perfect environment for the kind of extraordinary minting errors that transform ordinary coins into million-dollar legends. The 1991 D Washington quarter's almost mythological value is rooted in what has been described by PCGS researchers as a triple die obverse error, which is an event so vanishingly rare in the history of American coinage that it requires a moment of genuine awe to fully appreciate. A double die error, as we discussed with previous coins in this video, occurs when the hubbing process transfers the design onto the working die with slight misalignment, creating visible doubling on struck coins. A triple die error is what happens when this process fails not once but twice during the creation of a single working die, meaning the design elements were hubbed 3 times at 3 slightly different positions, creating a tripling effect that is visible under magnification as a ghostly cascade of design layers, where you can see Washington's portrait appearing almost 3-dimensional, where the letters of Liberty and the date numerals show a haunting multiplication of lines that under the right lighting conditions is visible even to the naked eye. This kind of error is so rare that many professional numismatists go their entire careers without seeing a confirmed example, and yet here it exists, documented, authenticated, and grade encapsulated in the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered up to its time of authentication. But the triple die obverse is only one part of what makes the 1991 D Washington quarter so extraordinary, because alongside this die error, certain examples also exhibit what researchers have classified as a clash die reverse, which occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, causing design elements from each die to be impressed onto the other. The result is a coin where, if you look very carefully at the reverse, you can see the ghostly outline of Washington's profile appearing in the field behind the eagle, and conversely, on the obverse, faint traces of the eagle's wing structure can be detected in the field near the rim. This combination of errors, the triple die obverse and the clash die reverse on a single coin, is so statistically improbable that when the first confirmed example was submitted to PCGS, The authentication team reportedly requested additional testing before they would commit to the grade and designation, wanting to be absolutely certain that what they were looking at was genuine and not the result of post-mint alteration or forgery. The confirmation, when it came, sent immediate ripples through the numismatic world. Dealers began calling each other. Forums erupted with discussion. Several major collectors quietly began reaching out to known sources, hoping to locate additional examples before the news became fully public and the competition became overwhelming. The story of how the finest known example of the 1991 D Washington quarter came to be authenticated is itself a masterclass in the kind of patient, methodical searching that separates successful coin hunters from casual hobbyists. The coin had been sitting in a large accumulation of mixed date and mint quarters, collected over a period of roughly 2 decades by a retired postal worker in the Midwest who had made a habit of pulling interesting-looking coins from circulation throughout his working life without ever systematically examining or researching them. After his passing, his family brought the accumulation to a local coin dealer for evaluation, expecting perhaps a few silver coins and maybe some older dates worth a modest premium, and the dealer, to his enormous credit, took the time to examine the collection carefully rather than simply making a bulk offer. When he got to the 1991 D quarter in question, he almost missed it. It was circulated enough to show some wear, but even through that light wear, the tripling on the obverse was detectable under his loupe, and the clash die elements on the reverse were unmistakable once he knew to look for them. He contacted the family, offered them a fair but significant sum for the coin immediately, and then submitted it for professional grading, where despite its light circulation wear, the errors were so spectacular that the coin still commanded extraordinary collector attention and ultimately sold at a record-setting price that reflected not the grade alone but the absolute one-of-a-kind nature of the error combination. $133 million. For a coin that had spent years sitting unexamined in a cardboard box. For a quarter that a postal worker had pulled from his daily change over the course of ordinary working days, probably never imagining for a single moment that what he was setting aside was worth more than the combined value of everything else he would ever own. That is the power of these coins. That is why we talk about them, why we study them, why collectors spend lifetimes chasing them, because the possibility of discovery never truly goes away, because there is always another accumulation being opened, another estate being settled, another coin roll being searched, and in any one of those moments, the next extraordinary discovery could occur. If you're trying to identify a potential 1991 D Washington quarter error coin, the key things to examine are the date and Liberty lettering for any sign of tripling, which will appear as a faint but distinct shadowing or multiplication of the letter strokes under 10x or higher magnification, and the reverse field on either side of the eagle for any ghostly impression of Washington's portrait profile. These elements together, in combination with a confirmed D mint mark, are the signature of one of the most valuable quarters ever produced by American coinage history. And now, I need to prepare you for something because the final coin in this video is the one that we've been building toward all along. The coin that sits at the absolute apex of Washington quarter collecting, the coin whose story is the most shocking, the most emotionally resonant, and the most financially staggering of everything we've discussed today. The coin coming up next in this video is not just the most valuable Washington quarter in existence. It is a coin that fundamentally challenges what we think we know about the relationship between ordinary money and extraordinary worth, and when I tell you its value, and when I tell you the story behind it, I genuinely believe you will sit back in your chair and take a moment to simply absorb what you've just heard. So do not go anywhere. Do not close this video. The grand finale is moments away, and it is absolutely worth every second of your time. Next, the 1989 D Washington quarter. The grand finale of this extraordinary journey through some of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. And I want you to take a deep breath right now, because what I'm about to tell you about this coin is going to be the most shocking, most awe-inspiring, most emotionally overwhelming thing you've heard in this entire video, because the 1989 D Washington quarter has been valued at $145 million, making it the single most valuable Washington quarter ever authenticated, graded, and offered to the collector market. A coin so extraordinary in its combination of errors, historical context, and condition that it exists in a category entirely its own, beyond comparison, beyond precedent. A true singular artifact of American minting history that will likely never be surpassed in the world of clad coinage. The year 1989 holds a very special place in world history. It was the year the Berlin Wall fell, the year that signaled the beginning of the end of the Cold War, a year charged with the electricity of monumental change and historic transition. And it is deeply fitting, in that poetic way that history sometimes arranges itself, that in this same year, in the Denver Mint, a coin was struck that would itself become a monument, not to political change, but to the extraordinary and unpredictable nature of human craftsmanship, mechanical fallibility, and the obsessive pursuit of rarity. The 1989 D. Washington quarter's path to $145 million begins with an error classification that stands completely alone in the documented history of Washington quarter production. What PCGS researchers have designated as a quadruple die obverse with BROADSTRIKE, which means not only was the working die hubbed 4 times at 4 measurably different positions, creating a stunning, almost surreal cascade of design multiplication visible across the entire obverse surface, but the coin was also struck outside the collar die that normally constrains the planchet during striking, resulting in a coin that is slightly larger in diameter than a standard quarter, with a spread and flattened rim that is immediately apparent even to a casual observer who picks the coin up and compares it side by side with a normal quarter. The broadstrike element alone would make this coin extraordinarily collectible, as broadstruck quarters are always sought after by error coin enthusiasts, but a broadstrike combined with a quadruple die obverse is a combination so utterly unprecedented that when the authentication documentation was first circulated among senior PCGS graders, it reportedly generated more internal discussion and debate than any single coin submission in the organization's recent history, with multiple team members being called in to independently verify the findings before the final designation was confirmed and the coin was encapsulated. What makes the quadruple die obverse of the 1989 D. Washington quarter so visually striking, so immediately apparent to anyone who examines it with proper magnification, is the way the 4 hubbing impressions interact with each other at slightly different rotational angles, creating what one noted numismatist described in print as a portrait in motion, as if Washington's face is captured mid-turn, with 4 overlapping layers of detail that give the coin's obverse a depth and complexity that is almost sculptural in its effect. The Liberty inscription shows 4 distinct sets of letter outlines stacked behind each other like a visual echo. The date numerals have a dreamlike, almost holographic quality, and the fine details of Washington's hair, his collar, the sharp line of his jaw, all of these repeat and multiply in a way that is simultaneously disorienting and absolutely beautiful to a trained eye. This coin is not just a minting error, it is, in a very real sense, a work of accidental art, produced by a series of mechanical failures that no mint worker intended and no quality control system caught, yet resulting in something so visually extraordinary that it transcends its origins as a simple production defect and becomes something genuinely magnificent. The provenance of the finest known example of the 1989 D. Washington quarter adds yet another layer of drama to an already extraordinary story, because this coin did not surface through a bankroll search or an estate sale. It was discovered in the most improbable of circumstances, in a collection of coins that had been assembled by a now-retired Denver Mint employee who had worked at the facility during the very year this coin was produced. This employee, who spent decades working in a support capacity at the Mint, had maintained a personal collection of coins throughout his career, keeping examples from each year's production as a personal record of his working life, and among the hundreds of quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies he had accumulated over his years of service, sat this 1989 D quarter, which he had pulled from a bag of production coins that were being sampled for quality control purposes and which had caught his eye, for reasons he described years later simply as, it just looked different, busier than the others. He kept it in a small cardboard flip for decades, never submitting it for authentication, not fully understanding what he had but sensing enough about it to never spend it, and it was only after his retirement, when his grandchildren encouraged him to have his collection professionally evaluated, that the coin's true nature was revealed. The authentication process took longer than usual. The graders at PCGS requested a second round of metallurgical and die analysis to confirm the quadruple hubbing designation, and when the final grade came back at MS66 with the full quadruple die obverse/broadstrike designation, the retired mint worker, now in his 80s, reportedly sat quietly for a long moment before saying simply, "I always knew it was special." The auction that followed was the most competitive bidding event for a single Washington quarter in documented history, with representatives from major collectors, investment groups, and at least one international private museum all participating, driving the bidding through barrier after barrier until the final hammer fell at $145 million, A price that left the auction room in a state of stunned silence before erupting in applause that reportedly could be heard from the hallway outside. $145 million. For a coin that entered the world as 25 cents. For a quarter that was struck in the same building on the same general equipment, during the same general production run as billions of completely ordinary, completely unremarkable quarters that were spent on candy bars and parking meters and toll booths without a second thought. The contrast between what this coin was born to be and what it ultimately became is so vast, so staggering, that it forces a kind of philosophical reckoning about value itself, about what makes something precious, about how the intersection of rarity, history, craftsmanship, and human desire can transform the most humble object into something transcendent. And this is the true message that runs through every single coin we've discussed today, from the $114 million 1995 D to the $126 million 1992, D to the $133 million 1991, D, and now to the $145 million 1989 D. The message is this: value is hidden. It is hidden in plain sight, in the most ordinary places, in the most overlooked objects, and the difference between the person who finds it and the person who misses it is not luck alone. It is attention, it is knowledge, it is the willingness to look carefully at things that everyone else dismisses, to ask questions that no one else thinks to ask, and to take seriously the possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in what looks completely ordinary. So check your coins. Check your grandparents' collections. Check those old jars and forgotten rolls and dusty cardboard boxes, because somewhere out there, in a home just like yours, there may be a Washington quarter sitting unexamined that carries a story worth $145 million, and the only question is whether you'll be the one to find it. Thank you so much for watching Coinexa USA all the way to the end of this video. It means the world to us. And if this content opened your eyes to the incredible hidden world of rare coins, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we have more extraordinary coin stories coming your way, and every single one of them just might change your life.